Um, and I wanted to explore this area a little bit because when you read about mindfulness, when you come across mindfulness, often it can be put in terms that are sort of make it sound merely like a method, and there isn't any particular meaning to it. But the actual experience of mindfulness is, or can be, very different from that. And I wanted to explore that because I think it's quite important, actually. Mindfulness it's quite a discipline, isn't it? Practicing meditation and or mindfulness. And unless a discipline is kind of meaningful to us, it can be really boring. So partly I was stimulated to talk about this because in the first week in the series where I was talking about body awareness, I said at one point that I used to find body awareness really boring. the sort of discipline of having to just keep coming back to the body, continuously coming back to the body. The prospect of watching a film or going for a run, playing sport or reading a book, much more interesting. But Vidyasaki said to me, I don't find it boring. And I think that's true. I think actually they're both true. And why is it? Why can there be so much difference between one meditation or mindful walk, whatever it is? Why can one be so rich with meaning, and the next be dull, dry, boring? You can't keep your mind on what you're doing. Well, that's what I want to explore, and what we can do about it. Basically, how we can find the meaning, cultivate the meaning in mindfulness, so that we can make it a sustainable practice. So that's what I want to talk about. If we go right back to the roots of meditation, mindfulness, and metta, the Buddha is the originator of mindfulness and metta as well, actually. He taught those practices initially, and he taught them because of his insight into the meaning of life, I suppose, into the significance of human experience. So I wanted to sort of start there. We often don't start there with meditation, but I thought it'd be interesting. That the Buddha had this sort of insight into the significance of experience, and his simplest communication of that was impermanence. He said all things, from trees to seasons to lunch to human beings, are changing. They're in constant flux. But he was particularly concerned about human beings in this respect, because he wasn't just saying that we're in flux in some sort of random way, that you wake up in one mood and by the end of the day you're in another. He wasn't just saying that we sort of our moods are sort of randomly determined by external events. He was saying actually that humans can grow. So intrinsic to human consciousness is the capacity to grow. So with mindfulness, we've got the capacity to grow in awareness, to become more aware. So that was kind of principally what the Buddha was kind of concerned with. And he talked about this growth in terms of sort of stepping out of our habits. It's our habits that kind of that keep us sort of asleep in a way. We just carry on doing the same old things, don't we? That's what habits are. We're not really fully awake. We're sort of on automatic pilot. Very, very easy to go through our life like that. But awareness doesn't grow if we do that. So instead, kind of stepping out of our habits, becoming aware of habits so that we can step out of them, do something different or not act out of them, is how we grow. And he talked to these habits with reference to meditation in terms of the hindrances. I'll say why he said hindrances, why he called them hindrances. But without going into all of them, our predominant habits of kind of getting a bit grabby, kind of wanting pleasurable experience, kind of getting grabby, kind of sticky with kind of pleasurable experience, broadly speaking, pleasurable experience. That sort of grabby kind of state we can get into, or aversive, kind of pushing away. Those are the kind of two main habits that we have. But then also, he talked about kind of doubt and confusion, actually, as being another sort of major category of habits. He talked about too much energy and too little energy as well, anxiety and kind of sleepiness. And this is sort of list, a sort of little schema of our habits that come up. And yeah, he called them hindrances. So hindrances to what? Well, as I say, kind of growth in awareness. But what is that sort of state that is a growth in awareness? I want us to talk about that a little bit, because they're hindrances really to kind of deeper states of consciousness. Now that might sound rather grand, but what we find is if we move beyond the hindrances, so usually we're sort of within the grip of the hindrances, we're subtly kind of thinking, what can I get out of this? We'll be doing that kind of naturally in our job, for a lot of times subtly kind of concerned with our status or our financial reward, all sorts of things like that. So this sort of grabby sort of state. If we can step out of those sorts of states, we can step into deeper states of consciousness. And these deeper states of consciousness are inherently meaningful. So that's where this, in a way, that there's a question of meaning is there in consciousness, or the reality of meaning is there in consciousness. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this. I'm sure we've all had experiences, sort of heightened states of mindfulness. Maybe you're on retreat. Maybe it just happened to you. It can happen to you at work, where suddenly you're sort of in a heightened sort of state of mindfulness. Psychologists kind of talk about this as flow, don't they? You suddenly find yourself sort of effortlessly and deeply involved in what you're doing. So what's noticeable about those states is they are sort of inherently meaningful. There is a sort of perhaps it's worth saying what I mean by meaningful. There's a sort of intrinsic sort of sense of significance, deeper significance to those states. That's what we mean by meaningful, isn't it? Meaning doesn't mean that there's necessarily a sort of a written sort of purpose to what you're doing. It's just sort of rich with meaning and significance. Yeah, at the same time, somehow they do point to a sort of deeper purpose. So an experience I had of this before I was a meditator, actually, was when I was climbing. I was rock climbing, and I found myself pulling around the corner of a particular piece of rock, which is high up in a valley in the Lake District. There was a massive drop beneath, and as I pulled round, it suddenly dawned on me that I could not get back. There was no way to get back. The shock hit me like a door kind of slamming. And it projected me into a heightened or deepened state of consciousness. Suddenly the fear just completely dropped away. Time sort of slowed up. So I seemed to be able to do many more things in a short space of time than I usually could. My mind was kind of thinking much more quickly than I usually could, and it was incredibly apparent kind of what I needed to do. I just needed to get up the rock face. Now, what was really noticeable about this was that it was like, actually, previously I'd been climbing with the idea that I could get back down. This sort of, if all else fails, I could get back down, and suddenly that door closed, and I was committed. I was absolutely committed. So doubt was no longer an option. There was one way out, and that was up. And it made me, looking back, realize that often I was sort of climbing with this kind of sort of second guessing, kind of, shall I, if I don't make it, I'll go back down, as opposed to sort of fully committing. And this was the hindrance of doubt. That can just subtly have us ongoingly in its grips. So that door closed, and instead of panic, I was projected into a kind of much richer, fuller state of consciousness. And what was really interesting was it was meaningful. It felt kind of rich with significance. It wasn't just more concentrated, it was rich with significance. So that's what I mean, that actually inherent within heightened states of consciousness is meaning. So that really is why, that's what the Buddha was kind of wanting us to sort of wake up to, that there is a sort of deeper meaning in life, and it's to be found in consciousness. It's to be discovered by developing deeper states of consciousness. So, yeah, often we don't kind of start talking about this with meditation. We often talk about meditation as a method. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But first of all, I wanted to jump to the problem of 6:15 in the morning. The alarm goes off. I speak for myself. So some mornings, I do not believe this. I've had that experience of a deeper state of consciousness. I know that it's inherently meaningful as I'm talking to you now, but at 6:15, I do not believe that. In fact, at 6:15, I do not believe some days that mind can change, and I don't believe that it can grow. What I believe instead is that mind is very tired and mind wants to go back to bed. Have you ever had that experience? So what I'm getting at is, well, actually, yeah. So sometimes, because I've been meditating a long time, I remember that that's not necessarily true. It's not sort of what I believe in my heart, but I remember, oh yes, I've been here before. I managed to get out of bed, and by 7:10, after 10 minutes of meditation, I do believe that mind can change, and that mind can grow, that awareness can grow. Now that really is the situation we are in as human beings. That really this whole area of what you might call the sort of the view or the purpose of meditation is constantly shifting. In a way, we need to bring this into our meditation practice. Yeah, this word view, often when we use that word view, we're thinking the intellect, we're thinking something that you can tell your friends in an eloquent way what you think. your views, your opinions. Well, that's not what I mean at all. I mean something much more active, much more applied. It's much more like viewing. So as I say, in that moment, 6:15, I mean, often I do just, I do feel the mind can change. I do believe the mind can change in that 6:15, but sometimes I don't. Well, at that time, that I am kind of viewing my experience in that sort of way. So what's really interesting about this is that our view that I'm getting at is coinciding with our experience. Yeah. So in that moment at 6:15, I'm sort of thinking to myself. Well, actually, I'm not thinking to myself. The view is just there. This is my state. This isn't going to change. I want to go back to bed. And that sort of coincides with my experience of tiredness. Don't want to get up. Yeah, or it seems to coincide with it. By 7:10, the view that mind can change, that mind can grow, starts to coincide with my experience. So that is what's happening kind of all the time. We've got this kind of coincidence. We talk of our experience, but actually it's not just experience, it's also kind of view. There's a kind of view that we're bringing to our experience. So that's, I hope I'm kind of getting this across clearly enough. That view that I've referred to in terms of what the Buddha's view of the purpose of meditation is something that's coming into focus and going out of focus in our practice all the time. So that is why Vidyasaki says, no, it's not. Body awareness is rich and meaningful and significant. And then at another time, I'm saying, no, it's not. It's really boring. It's because of the way that we're viewing it. So this is something that we need to take into account in our meditation practice. We need to realize that we aren't just practicing a technique, a sort of sanitized sort of method. Actually, there is view. Actually, what the truth of it is, or what the Buddha would say, is view is method. Yeah, if you view your experience in this particular way, your experience is likely to open up. If you view your experience in this particular way, in another particular way, it will have consequences for what you experience. So, what we're going to be doing in the practice is sort of is just bringing this into focus, bringing the view into focus in the practice. In a way, sort of cultivating the view. So, what we'll do is we just at times use a phrase, mind grows, and what we're doing is we're going to sort of try that view out, actually looking at our experience. Our main focus is our experience, but we're sort of looking through this view as though a kind of pair of spectacles or something. We're looking through the view, the spectacles, to see, does it coincide with our experience? Yeah. At the moment, you've got a particular view that you are viewing your experience with, and that is probably coinciding with what's going on in your experience. But in meditation, we look in a closer way. We investigate our experience in a more detailed way, if you like, so we can kind of try out this view, mind grows, and see in our investigation in the mindfulness of breathing if that's true. So what we're looking for is this coincidence of view. That's what's happening in a heightened state of mindfulness. There is inherent within that a view that mind can change, mind can grow, and that's what leads to significance, experiencing the same content of your experience, but in a different sort of way. So the reason why I'm saying all this is because at 6:15 we need to be working with view as well. We need to be aware that view is at play, and so we can actually work with it. There is a time for just going back to sleep, but oftentimes when you do that, well, actually nowadays I find later on in the day, I know somewhere in my experience I have this uncomfortable feeling I should have got up. I kind of know I should have got up. Yeah. So what do we do at 6:15? Well, we need to remember it's just a view. There's view at play here. And views can change. Could I view my experience in a different way? So let's set ourselves up for meditation. So putting yourself on your cushions or your chair. And when you're ready, closing your eyes and just letting your mind settle into your experience. Just like something slowly floating down through water. Our awareness sinking and seeping into physical experience of the sensations of the body. Feeling our awareness sinking and seeping into contact with the ground, contact at the bottom on the cushion, chair. So just resting your attention in those direct sensations of contact. And as you're doing this, you're probably already getting a sense of the kind of mood of your mind. You might even sense that there's an openness. There is a sense of meaning running through your experience. There may be, or just becoming aware of your thoughts, the sort of weather of your mind, welcoming that in. And then letting the sensations of breathing emerge into your awareness. Where is it that you actually experience the breath right now? Is it in the belly or the chest? So in this way, taking time for our awareness to sort of gather in the sensations of breathing. And as we're doing this, we just drop in the phrase, mind can change, mind grows. Just like a pebble dropped into water, and seeing if that's happening in your experience. Seeing if there's this coincidence of view and experience. Don't worry if there's no response, no effect, that's fine. We're going to do this a number of times. So following the sensations of breathing, letting the mind gather in the sensations of breathing. If your mind is running off, getting distracted, that's fine. See if you can breathe with the distractions. Let them be there. You could try that. And we'll move into the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing. So counting after the out-breath, but keeping the mind relaxed and open, watching out for a kind of achievement, focus. Just use the counting to support your gathering of awareness in the sensations of breathing. And if and when the mind goes off, not worrying about that, keeping a light-hearted attitude, an open mind. And maybe just dropping in the phrase again, mind can change, mind grows. And just seeing if that fits experience. Making sure the counting is just serving, not leading. And as we come towards the end of the first stage, just broadening your awareness out to become aware of the whole body, and through that the mind too. Breathing is there in the background, keeping us anchored. Letting anything about our mind state that's coming into awareness bubble up. There may be subtle hindrances, subtle grasping or pushing away. Just remembering that's going to hinder our deepening into awareness. And noticing, has the mind, since the beginning of the meditation, changed? Has awareness grown in any small way? And now, the second stage, re-engaging having learnt from anything that became apparent when we broadened out about how we might adjust our approach in this stage. And just dropping in the phrase again, mind can change, mind grows. Does that fit experience? Does it affect your experience of the practice? And as we come towards the end of the second stage, just broadening out, feeling the sensations in the whole body. The breath, just the anchor in the background. And noticing anything about our mind, anything that's changed, any sense of the mind incrementally growing in awareness. And then we move into the third stage. And dropping the phrase in, mind can change, mind grows. Seeing if that resonates with experience, fits with your current experience. And if so, what effect does that have on your experience of this moment of awareness of the breath? Or even this moment of awareness of distraction. And then briefly in the fourth stage, well, shortened fourth stage, finding a point of finer experience of the breath to see if that intensifies your awareness. And as we come towards the end of the practice, dropping the effort that you're making without moving, just sitting. And seeing what happens in the mind when we do this. And when we're ready, opening your eyes to take in the visual sense. So just giving yourself a bit of time to adjust out of meditation. It's important to do as well. Have a little sort of buffer zone. And then what we do in this class is interrupt your buffer zone by asking you if you've got any questions. So are there any questions sort of at your time, but any questions sort of bubbling up that you want to ask about this area of meaning, the meaning and purpose within the practice, and how to cultivate that, how to cultivate is perhaps the best word. It's sort of intrinsic to the practice, but how to amplify that.
There's something very stilling about that meditation. I don't know whether people out there found that as well, but to me, I just felt very connected to something. But when you were you were like doing this movement with your hands, sort of overlapping thing, that when you were explaining it, I didn't kind of quite get. But when I was meditating, I was, I think what I normally do is if I label things as like, oh, that's boredom, I'm being resistant, this is that, whatever. But in that one, I was trying to, I'm doing the same hand movement now, which they won't be able to see, but anyway, of seeing, sort of just holding that experience as a separate thing and then seeing how that came into relation with a view, rather than, going for the labeling or the... And that just seemed like a completely different experience of being able to hold, sort of wait for something else to come into experience rather than just, thinking of resistance or craving or whatever. Anyway, I've got to concentrate now because there's questions coming. So Alison is saying, thank you. Please, could you clarify what the second and third stages are? Also, could you give examples of what happens for you when you say to yourself, mind can change, mind grows? I didn't quite get what I should be sensing in terms of resonance with my experience.
Yeah, great. Okay, so in the second and third stage, so in the second stage, we just shift where we count. So we count just before the in-breath. Again, just as the first stage, up to 10, and then back if that's your chosen number. And then the third stage would drop the counting completely, and just attend to the sensations of breathing without the counting. So that's the second and third stage. Yeah, and then you you were asking about what do I experience? Yeah. Well, actually, I probably experience different things at different times. But yeah, it's interesting. We can actually be meditating whilst doubting that the mind can change, doubting that we can develop awareness. Oddly, we're perverse enough to do that. I've done that plenty of times. You suddenly realize, actually, I don't really have any confidence. It's a bit like me going up the rock face, actually. Going up the rock face, but thinking, oh, I'll go back down if I'm not going to make this. And then the door to back down closing, and that shifting me out of that tendency to sort of doubt and undermine. So what I was experiencing in that meditation was an increased sense, I suppose, increased sort of confidence, an increased experience of the mind changing, the mind capable of changing. So that's what was sort of coming in there. At other times, it might be more like noticing, I don't really think the mind can change. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So it might actually highlight the hindrance of doubt. I'm actually sort of doubting that there isn't a coincidence, a fitting of that view with my experience. Instead, it doesn't fit. It jangles. It's dissonant. So that would be a helpful thing to learn as well. But I hope that gives you an idea. In a way, I was sort of not particularly wanting to tell you what you should be experiencing, if you see what I mean. The main thing is that you're sort of openly exploring what actually is experiencing, what actually you are experiencing. Yep. I hope that's helpful. And
Damien said, thanks, Arthasiddhi, very deep meditation. But a shame I had to end so quickly.
Yeah.
It's a bit jarring.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, perhaps we should have had a bit more time to meditate, but time was running on.
And Miriam's just making a comment that her mind quietened, and that in itself was a huge change in experience. So dropped into the body more.
Mm.
And Alison says, thank you, that's very helpful. So you did answer the question.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, I hope it's opened up the area of viewing and view, that actually meditation is not just a recipe of things to do. It's actually got a sort of we're also attending to how we're viewing. You could call it attitude. What sort of attitude we're bringing to the practice? An attitude that mind can change, mind can grow, and we're doing that every moment of the day. We're bringing a particular viewing. We're viewing our experience in a particular way. So it's an important thing to explore in the meditation practice. But there's years to explore that, so don't connect with it this time.